Hey guys, this is Alex here, and today I wanted to make a video to bring up a topic that I've been having a lot of conversations about lately with different colleagues, friends, and a few clients as well, in regards to real estate investing, and that is the concept of Airbnb-ing your rental property, or in more general terms, running a rental property as a short-term rental instead of as a long-term rental. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the concept, when you own a property that you choose to rent out to tenants, your only option is not just to rent it out to one tenant for the entire year, like the majority of investors and the majority of landlords are running rental properties as, but you also have the option to rent it out as a short-term or perhaps a vacation rental as well, right? And with the explosion of Airbnb over the last decade, more and more people are choosing to rent out space that they own on Airbnb and offer short-term and other short-term rental platforms, simply because you can generate so much more money when you rent out a property on a nightly basis versus renting it out on a monthly basis. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you are cycling someone new in every single night into your property. In fact, you'll probably have a lot of people that rent it out for several weeks at a time, or maybe even several months at a time. But because this is a short-term place for people, you have the ability to charge them on a nightly basis, which is more like a hotel charge, right? So, and as most of you know from previous days in a hotel, you're typically paying at least $150, maybe $200 per night, just for one small room and a bathroom. So imagine if you rented out, say, a full 2-bedroom apartment on a nightly basis. That's like a suite at a hotel, or maybe even nicer because you have, that homey feel of an apartment rather than the hustle bustle of a hotel. So this is how people are generating, $300-$400 per night from renting out their apartments on Airbnb. It's absolutely crazy. So if you multiply that $300 per night by 30 days in a month, that generates up to $9,000 from that one 2-bedroom apartment. Now, of course, like any hotel, you're probably not gonna be able to rent it out for every single night. But let's say you rent it out for 20 out of the 30 days, and it's vacant for 10, which is pretty standard in most cities, and that's what Airbnb tells us, what other short-term rental platforms tell us, that the average vacancy, as a whole around the country is about 60% for these short-term rental properties. So that would leave you with a total of $6,000 generated, right? 20 days times $300 per night, $6,000 in rent that you generate from that one 2-bedroom apartment. And I can promise you that just about nowhere in the country has a 2-bedroom apartment that literally people are paying $6,000 per month. Unless it's maybe a luxury it's a luxury apartment in Manhattan or something like that. Then maybe you got someone paying $6,000 a month for one apartment. But the only way you can actually generate that $6,000 for a normal 2-bedroom apartment is by renting it out on a nightly basis, because you can jack up the prices on a nightly basis. So as another real-life example, I was checking out a property yesterday for a client, and the property was listed at $529,000. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, right? 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom here in Pacific Beach, San Diego, and it had been on Airbnb for the last 12 months. And over the course of that 12 months, it had generated over $70,000 in rental income by renting it out on a nightly basis. I think they were primarily using Airbnb. They might have been using VRBO, but needless to say, it was rented out as a short-term rental property. So that comes out to about $5,800 per month, which is crazy for a 2-bedroom apartment. So if this same property were to be rented out as a long-term rental and you have someone sign a year-long lease, then the most you could probably get for that apartment is somewhere between $2,500 and $3,000 per month, depending on how nice it is and what happens in the market over the next 12 months here. So now let's look at this from a strictly real estate investment side, because you're probably thinking, who has $529,000 in cash sitting around to put into a property, right? Most people are going to have to get a mortgage in order to acquire that property. Now, when investing in a property that you are buying for investment purposes, most lenders are going to require that you put about 20% down, right? So that's going to come out to a little bit more than $100,000 and some change for this property. So when you put that down, your monthly payment is going to be about $2,400 per month, depending on your area, because taxes and insurance are going to be different in every area. And this particular property here in Pacific Beach that we were looking at is a condo, and there is a homeowners association fee, or HOA fee as some call it, and it was $300 per month, right? So that makes your monthly total up to your monthly payment total up to $2,700 per month. So if you rent it out for that $3,000 that you'd get for, getting someone to sign a year-long lease and pay on a monthly basis, that would leave your monthly cash flow at about $300 each month, right? $3,000 minus the $2,700 payment that you're paying on the mortgage and taxes as well as insurance, $300 left over, minus any maintenance as well that you have to factor in. In addition to paying down the mortgage, right? So having your tenant pay down the mortgage with that $2,700 that, you're getting from them, the $3,000 that you're getting from them, and then you're putting $2,700 towards the mortgage, which is kind of like putting money into a bank for you, which is kind of cool, obviously, as well as any appreciation that condo sees and how much it might go up in value. So overall, this investment would be considered a cash flowing investment and not a terrible one, right? It's not great because it only generates about $300 after you pay all the expenses each month, but it makes a little bit of money each month and doesn't cost you anything. That's the important thing. Now, let's look at this from a short-term rental investment standpoint. So if you are paying that same $2,700 mortgage and fees as well, but instead you continue renting out this property as a short-term rental, as I mentioned, this current property is generating $5,800 per month by renting it out on a nightly basis. So instead of a measly $300 per month in cash flow at the end of each month, you're generating over $3,100 in cash flow each month just by renting it out on a nightly basis, right? $5,800 minus $2,700, $3,100 left over. Now, this is again in addition to paying down the mortgage, which with your tenants' money, by the way, the money that these tenants that are paying you each time they come and stay on your property, that's what you're using to pay down the mortgage, and you're allowing the asset to go up in value still, but you're just generating more cash flow by renting it out on a nightly basis. So this is what a lot of people are doing. And it's why a lot of investors are choosing to rent out their properties on platforms like Airbnb and VRBO and other short-term rental platforms instead of renting it out on a long-term basis. So I hope this makes sense, and I hope this explains the concept to you guys a little bit, because I know it's becoming more popular, but the majority of the investor world is still in the dark about it, and are really in the dark about just how high the profits are with this business model. So now that I've explained how this works and why more and more investors are choosing to focus their investing by using this model, let me go into some of the pros and cons of this business model. So first, real quick, we'll talk about the pros. So I already talked about much higher rental income, right? $5,800 versus $3,000, you're making $3,100 in rental income versus $300 in rental income. So, and that's just one example, and that was obviously on the higher end, but that's just a general pro is that as renting it out as a short-term rental, you are generally going to be able to generate more cash flow each month. And it can also be automated through technology, and as well as having a good manager and a good management company, or depending on either a good manager or a management company. So you can really automate it pretty easily, so you don't actually have to worry about checking people in or checking people out. You have someone else do that for you, and you can just sit back and collect the money. And you don't have to worry about collecting rent, and you don't have to worry about evictions. So when you have a long-term tenant, you have someone sign a 12-year lease, they're in there for 12 years, 8 months in, they stop paying their rent, and you want to get them out of there because they're just not paying their rent, then you have to go through a whole court process, get them out of there, file an eviction notice, and the whole thing can be a nightmare. With Airbnb and short-term rentals, like a hotel, people are paying you in advance staying in the property, and then once their terms are up, they get out of there, and you don't have to worry about any of those evictions or anything like that, which is great. So now let me go over some of the cons of this model, because nothing is perfect, and there really must be a catch, right? So I've been trying to find a catch for a while in this business model. So here are the cons, right? More frequent tenants could mean more problems. Rather than having one tenant in there for 12 months for that entire year period that you only have to worry about that one tenant, and if they're good, then you're pretty much set for the entire year. You don't have to worry about them causing any damage or any kind of, not paying on time or something like that. Typically, you don't have that to worry about. So more frequent tenants in there could mean more problems. You could have, some crazy kids get in there or something like that mess the place up, and then you got to clean that up. And then it just causes you a little bit more of a headache in that way. And you just don't, it throws a little bit more of a wild card in there. And you also have to pay for some sort of customer service person or some sort of manager to be available to guests 24/7, which does cost more than the traditional property manager, because you have to have someone available 24/7, and they, typically are dealing with, different types of tenants for one property rather than just dealing with one long-term tenant in one property, which is a lot more easy to manage. So you do have to have someone available. And because a lot of these, pretty much all of these people that are staying in your property are coming from out of town, they typically don't know. There's going to be certain things about the city, your city, that they just don't know about, and they just need to have access to someone in case something goes wrong. So you do have to pay for someone to be available 24/7. And then, of course, state and local regulations could change the laws of short-term rentals. There's been, a lot of debate, a lot of conversation about short-term rentals and how they're potentially, ruining certain neighborhoods where there's a lot of locals, and it's creating too much of a tourist attraction to certain neighborhoods by allowing too many properties to become Airbnbs and short-term rentals. So state and local regulations could change short-term rental laws, which would, potentially then force you to have to start renting out your property on a more long-term basis. There are always ways to get around stuff like that. But, obviously when the state and local regulations crack down too much, there's only so much that you can do. So that is another thing to keep in mind. But as long as you're, making a smart investment, you're actually looking in places where, there have been short-term rentals for a while, and it's a great place for short-term rentals, and there's most likely not going to be, any kind of change in that area in the upcoming future, then you should probably be pretty good there. So just do your homework. So that's it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. I know this has been a hot conversation lately. I'm very passionate about it. I think it's got a lot of other real estate investing people very, very excited because of the very high cash flow potential. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to leave a comment down below. You can hit me up on Instagram, shoot me an email at alexknowsrealestate@gmail.com. Again, would love to meet anybody that is, making this business model work, or people that really just want to, start a conversation about why or why not this is a great investment to make. So thank you again. Hit that like button, subscribe down below, and I will see you guys in the next video.
She says that I'm her favorite 'cause she admires the art. Michelangelo with the flow, Picasso with the bar. She's well put together like a piece by Gershwin. Renaissance style, tonight is picture perfect. So smile and pack your bags real good, baby, 'cause you'll be gone for a while.